The stars stretched endlessly, silent and cold, as a broken fleet drifted through the empty dark. The ships were once proud carriers of the Varine people, a gentle and peaceful race known for building cities of light among the nebulae. Now, their hulls were cracked and blackened, their engines coughing weak energy, their people weak and afraid. They had been cast out, not by enemies, but by their own kind. The Galactic Union, the same body that once called them allies, had declared them traitors. Their only crime was kindness. They had sheltered human survivors after the last galactic war, and for that, the Union erased their name from every registry. No planet would let them land, no port would let them dock, no trade ship would answer their signals. The Varine had become ghosts of the stars. Inside the lead vessel, a once grand refugee carrier named Seraphis Dawn, Aelra stood at the bridge, staring into the black void beyond the cracked viewport. Her silver eyes reflected the dying light of the engines, her soft voice a whisper as she asked the question no one wanted to answer. How long until oxygen fails? A quiet murmur answered her, the engineer's voice trembling. Maybe 10 hours. Maybe less. Children cried softly in the corridors below. Families huddled together under flickering lights, trying to warm themselves with fading hope. Aelra had led them this far, but she knew the truth. Without help, they would all die here, alone, forgotten by the galaxy they once served. She turned toward her second-in-command, a young officer named Lear, who was watching her with fear and trust mixed in his wide eyes. "Commander," he said quietly, "there's one signal we haven't tried." Aelra looked up slowly, her voice low. "Earth?" Lear nodded, his hands shaking as he brought up a holographic display showing a long-range channel sealed for centuries. "Human territory is unapproachable," he said. "Their borders are closed, their systems guarded by machines that destroy anything that crosses, but—" He swallowed hard. "The stories say they help those who ask, even now." The bridge fell silent, every crew member staring, hearts torn between terror and hope. Aelra remembered the stories too. How the humans had once stood against the Union's control, how they had nearly burned the galaxy to ashes before retreating to their world. No one had seen a Terran ship in decades, yet their legend still haunted the stars. "Send the signal," she said softly, her voice trembling but firm. Lear hesitated. "If they answer, it could be war." Aelra smiled faintly. "If they don't, we're already dead." He nodded and pressed the command. A pulse of light shot into the void, vanishing into the endless dark, carrying the desperate cry of an exiled people. Hours passed, no answer came. Life support fell to half power. Aelra walked through the decks, comforting her people, listening to them whisper about the past, the homeworld they had lost, the cities turned to ash, the betrayal that came from the very council they once served. A mother asked if her child would see sunlight again, and Aelra had no answer, only a smile she forced for their sake. She returned to the bridge and sank into the command chair, the cold metal biting her skin, her eyelids heavy with exhaustion. For a moment, she closed her eyes and whispered, "If anyone out there hears us, please, don't let my people fade." Then the console flickered. Static crackled across the comms. Lear gasped and leaned forward. "Commander, someone is answering." The bridge crew froze, staring as the signal came through. Faint, deep, and unmistakably human. A voice spoke, calm and steady, with the weight of iron and empathy. "This is Commander Jace of the Terran Stellar Service. Signal received. Identify yourself." The crew exchanged shocked glances, some gasping, some crying. Aelra stepped closer, her hands trembling as she pressed the reply key. "This is Aelra of the Varine convoy," she said, her voice cracking. "We are refugees, exiled by the Galactic Union. We seek only mercy." There was a long silence. Then the voice returned, softer now. "Hold position. We are inbound." Lear stared at the radar in disbelief. "Inbound? But we're—" Before he could finish, alarms blared as massive energy readings filled the sensors. Something huge was emerging from hyperspace. The void rippled like water, and out of the darkness came a shape unlike anything they had ever seen. A warship the size of a city, its hull forged in black steel and white light, bearing the emblem of a blue-white Earth surrounded by stars. The TSS Solace, humanity's flagship. Every being on the bridge went silent. The ship radiated power and peace at once, its engines humming with calm thunder, its weapons silent but terrifying in their grace. Elra felt tears rise in her eyes, her breath shaking as she whispered, "They came." The human commander's voice echoed again, clear through every speaker. "To the exiles of the Varine, you are not alone anymore." And for the first time since their exile began, hope filled the void. In that endless sea of stars, humanity, the outcast of legend, had answered their call. The galaxy had cast them out, but Earth had opened its arms. The TSS Solace moved closer through the black silence of space, its engines glowing blue like the heart of a newborn star. The alien convoy hung helpless, their broken ships turning slowly, bathed in the pale light of Earth's warship. For a moment, no one breathed. No one spoke. Only the hum of scanners and the whisper of hope filled the bridge. Elra stood frozen at the viewport, staring at the Terran ship's massive structure. It looked like a floating city built from fire and courage. She had imagined human ships to be crude and brutal, but this one was elegant and calm, like a predator that chose peace because it was strong enough to destroy. A transmission blinked again, the same calm human voice filling the speakers. "This is Commander Jace of the Terran Stellar Service," the voice said. "We have locked onto your ships. Remain steady. We are sending boarding teams and medical drones." Aelra's second-in-command, Lear, looked at her with wide eyes, his voice trembling. "They're coming here? To us?" Aelra nodded slowly, her heart pounding. "Prepare to receive them, and do not show fear." In her mind, a storm raged. Were these the same humans the galaxy once feared? The same race the Union called monsters? Or had time changed them into something else? Minutes later, a shuttle emerged from the Terran warship, sleek and silver, descending toward the Seraphis Dawn. Its engines emitted a low hum as it locked onto the airlock, the metal doors groaning under the magnetic seal. The Varine crew gathered in the docking bay, armed but nervous, their eyes darting toward the gate as the lights turned green. When the door opened, a gust of sterilized air swept through the room, followed by tall, armored figures stepping out in formation. Their armor was matte black, smooth and silent, with glowing blue symbols on their chest, the emblem of Earth. The leader removed his helmet, revealing a human face, strong, calm, and surprisingly gentle. His eyes met Aelra's, and for a long moment, they simply stared. No words, just the silent meeting of two civilizations once divided by fear. Then he spoke, his voice steady. "You sent a distress signal. We heard it. We're here to help." The translator device on Aelra's wrist repeated his words in her language, each tone perfectly clear. She nodded slowly, unable to speak, her throat tight with disbelief. Behind him, human medics moved quietly among her people, handing out packs of food, vials of medicine, and portable aiders. They treated the wounded without hesitation, working side by side with the Varine as if they had done this 1,000 times before. One of the human doctors smiled at a Varine child, offering a small glowing cube that produced soft warmth. The child reached out, laughing, and for the first time since their exile, the ship echoed with the sound of joy. Aelra felt tears sting her eyes, and she turned to Commander Jace. Why would you help us?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jace looked at her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Because we remember what it's like to be alone in the dark," he said softly. "And because no one deserves to die for compassion." Those words hit her like a heartbeat, deep and powerful. For centuries, the galaxy had painted humans as monsters, destroyers, savages, creatures of war. But standing before her was something different. They were warriors, yes, but their strength came from something the galaxy had forgotten. Empathy. Hours passed as Terran engineers helped repair the Varine ships. Lear watched in awe as human drones welded shattered panels and restored life support systems in minutes. These people, They work like they're rebuilding family, not strangers, he whispered. Aelra nodded slowly. Maybe to them, we are, she replied. The humans didn't ask for payment, didn't demand allegiance. They simply helped, quietly and efficiently. Commander Jace spoke with Aelra on the bridge, their conversation calm but filled with quiet tension. The Galactic Union will not be pleased, she warned. They will come for us again, maybe even for you. Jace gave a faint smile. Then they'll find we're not so easy to push around anymore. His tone was confident but not arrogant. It carried the weight of someone who had seen too much war and still chosen peace. Later, when the last repair drone returned to the shuttle, Jace turned to Aelra. Your ships can't travel far in this condition, he said. You're coming with us, to Earth's sanctuary orbit. We'll keep you safe. There. The bridge fell silent, every Varine officer staring in disbelief. Aelra hesitated, her heart pounding. You would take us to Earth? Jace nodded. To safety, she whispered softly. No one has seen Earth in generations. Jace looked out the window, his gaze distant. Maybe it's time someone did. The Terran ships shifted formation, surrounding the Varine convoy like guardians. Engines flared to life, and the fleet began its journey toward the Sol system. As the stars blurred into streaks of light, Aelra stood beside Jace, her voice quiet. You could have ignored our signal, why didn't you? He looked at her, his expression solemn. Because once, the galaxy cast us out too, he said, and we swore no one else would suffer the same. Aelra felt a shiver run through her, not from fear, but from understanding. Maybe the stories were true after all. Maybe humans really were something the galaxy would never understand. A force that destroyed only to rebuild stronger. The Varine ships followed the Terran warship into the light, leaving behind the shadows of exile, and for the first time in years, Aelra dared to believe they were finally going home. The journey through hyperspace felt endless, a corridor of silver light stretching across the dark sea of stars. The Varine ships followed closely behind the giant Terran warship, its glowing engines a constant guide through the void. Aelra stood by the viewport, watching the blur of colors fade slowly as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace. When the distortion cleared, her breath caught in her throat. Before them floated something she had never imagined. A ring of light the size of a small moon, circling the blue planet below like a crown made for a world of gods. This is Earth's sanctuary orbit, Commander Jace said, his voice calm yet proud. It was built after the old wars, a place for those who had no home left. And Aelra's eyes widened as her scanners read the scale. Millions of inhabitants, hundreds of species, all living together under a single shield. The ring shimmered with soft gold light, dotted with green domes, oceans of glass, and cities that seemed to breathe. She whispered softly, You made a world in the sky. Jace smiled faintly. We made a promise. As the fleet approached, a soft voice came over the comms. A human controller from the sanctuary. Welcome home, Solace. Docking port, 23 is ready. Refugee clearance granted. The words echoed in the alien bridge, and for the first time, the Varine heard the word home spoken to them again. Tears filled Aelra's eyes, her crew whispering in disbelief. Even Lear, who had always been cautious, whispered, They called us home. The docking procedure was smooth and precise. When the airlocks opened, a rush of warm air and light filled the alien ship. The Varines stepped out one by one, blinking as artificial sunlight touched their faces. They entered a vast corridor lined with transparent walls, showing gardens, fountains, and clear blue skies simulated by layered holograms. Human and alien figures moved together in harmony. Reptilian merchants selling food beside human children laughing with tiny insectoid friends. Everywhere there was peace, the kind of peace the Union said was impossible. Aelra and her people were escorted through the hall by Commander Jace and a few Terran officers. Is this real? Lear asked quietly, his voice trembling. All these species, living together without war? Jace nodded. It wasn't easy, but we learned something after the galaxy turned its back on us. He paused, looking out over the observation deck where dozens of refugees watched Earth rise beneath them. When you lose everything, you learn to build better, he said. Elra stared through the glass, her reflection faint beside the sight of the blue planet below. It was beautiful, oceans glimmering like liquid sapphire, continents green and alive, wrapped in clouds of white silk. For generations, her people had whispered about Earth as a myth, a forbidden world. Now it lay before her, open, shining, alive. The sanctuary staff guided the refugees to living quarters. Warm chambers filled with soft light, clean air, and food that seemed to glow with energy. Children ran laughing through the corridors, their fear replaced by wonder. An elderly Varine fell to her knees, touching the metal floor and whispering, "It feels alive." Jace stood beside Aelra and said quietly, "Every panel of this station was built by those we saved. Every family who found peace here gave something back. Now it keeps growing, because kindness multiplies faster than hate." Later, Aelra was invited to the central plaza, a massive open dome overlooking Earth itself. At the center stood a monument of crystal shaped like two hands joined together, one human, one alien. Around it were words written in hundreds of languages. Aelra traced one with her fingers, asking, "What does this mean?" Jace smiled. "It says, 'Here, no one is a stranger.'" Her heart ached at the simplicity of it. The galaxy had built empires on fear, but humanity had built strength on compassion. But beneath the peace, something uneasy stirred. Reports came through quiet military channels. A small Union scout fleet had entered Terran space. The same forces that had exiled the Varine were searching for them again. Jace received the message on his wrist console, his jaw tightening. Elra noticed his expression and asked softly, "They're coming, aren't they?" He didn't lie, he simply nodded. "They won't stop," she said bitterly. "They can't stand to see us alive." Jace turned toward the window where Earth glowed below. "Then they'll have to face humanity again," he said, his voice low. "But this time, we won't fight for ourselves. We'll fight for you." That night, as artificial lights dies, to mimic sunset, Elra stood on a balcony overlooking the sanctuary gardens. Wind generators carried the soft scent of flowers across the air. Children of a dozen species played together under holographic stars, their laughter echoing through the steel corridors, and in that sound, Aelra heard something powerful. Not just peace, but defiance. She realized then that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their warships or machines, it was their refusal to let fear define them. In the distance, she could see the Terran fleet gathering again, their ships forming protective lines around the sanctuary. The same light that once destroyed worlds now guarded them. As Aelra watched, a message appeared on the city's main display, a quote written by humanity's first leader after the exodus from the galaxy. It read, "Strength means nothing without mercy." And beneath it, the symbol of Earth shone, a reminder that monsters could become guardians, and that outcasts could become family. Elra whispered softly into the night, "Maybe the galaxy was wrong about you." But deep down, she knew a new storm was coming, and this time, the stars themselves would bear witness to what humanity had become, the protectors of the forsaken, the home of the homeless, the heart of the lost. The calm of the sanctuary did not last. For a few peaceful days, the Varine lived in quiet wonder, breathing clean air, eating real food, and sleeping without fear. Children laughed again, their voices echoing through the metal halls of the Terran station. Elra watched them from the observation deck, her heart finally beginning to believe they might truly be safe. But far beyond the sanctuary's orbit, in the dark, cold regions of space, something vast was moving. The Galactic Union had found them. Deep in the command center of the TSS Solace, Commander Jace stood before a glowing tactical display, his face hard and quiet. Red dots appeared one by one on the holographic map. Warships, cruisers, and carriers, more than 50 vessels advancing in formation toward Earth's sanctuary orbit. "The Union fleet is crossing into Terran space," reported Lieutenant Rhea, her tone steady but eyes sharp with concern. "They're broadcasting an open transmission, coded Priority 1. Jace gave a small nod. "Play it." A voice filled the room, cold and arrogant. "This is Admiral Core of the Galactic Union Enforcement Fleet," the voice declared. "You are harboring fugitives and traitors of the Union. Surrender them at once, or we will purge your sanctuary." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's engines. Jace's jaw tightened, his expression unreadable. "Open a return channel," he said quietly. When the link activated, his voice came through calm and sharp as a blade. "This is Commander Jace of the Terran Stellar Service," he said. "You will stand down immediately. The refugees here are under Earth's protection." The alien admiral laughed, a cruel, metallic sound. "Earth's protection? The humans still play saviors after being banished from our council?" His voice dripped with mockery. "You were outcasts then. You are outcasts now." Jace didn't flinch. His voice remained calm. "We were outcasts, yes. And we learned how to survive when the galaxy turned its back. Now we protect those who can't. Cross this line, Admiral, and you'll learn what that means." The channel cut off. The room fell silent again. Rhea turned toward him. "Orders, sir?" Jace's eyes locked on the tactical screen, where the enemy fleet was spreading into attack formation. "Prepare defensive positions," he said. "Activate the sanctuary shield and recall all patrol wings. All refugees are to remain within inner zones, no exceptions." Alarms echoed across the sanctuary. Aelra looked up as the soft lights of the station turned red, a deep hum vibrating through the floor. Lear ran toward her, his voice tense. "They're coming, Co. Commander Jace says it's the Union fleet." The refugees gathered in confusion, watching the massive barrier around the station flicker to life. A transparent dome of blue light stretching over the entire structure. Aelra could see Earth below, calm and untouched, while above, the void shimmered with the reflection of approaching ships. She turned to her people and said, "Stay close. Do not panic. Humanity will not abandon us." But deep down, fear crept into her heart. Would the humans truly fight the entire Union for them? In the war room, the human officers worked like clockwork. Every motion was precise, every order quiet and sure. They didn't yell, didn't argue. They simply moved as one. Jace watched as the outer defense satellites powered up, a web of energy beams linking them to the main shield. "Targeting grid aligned," Rhea said. "Authorize non-lethal deterrence," Jace ordered. "Let's remind them how Mercy looks when it's armed." Moments later, the first Union cruiser fired a warning shot, a lance of plasma streaking through the void. It splashed harmlessly across the Terran shield, glowing for a moment before fading into nothing. The Union admiral sent another transmission, furious now. "Surrender the Varine or be destroyed," Jace answered with calm defiance. "We don't surrender those under our care. And we don't forget what exile feels like." Then he closed the channel again. The Union fleet advanced, weapons locking onto the sanctuary's outer perimeter. Inside, Aelra stood beside a window, watching the distant flashes of light. Her people huddled around her, whispering prayers. She clenched her fists and said softly, "They will not break us again." Lear looked at her with a shaky smile. "Not while the humans stand." Then, the first real volley came. Dozens of energy blasts struck the Terran shield in rapid succession. The impact shook the entire ring, lights flickering, systems groaning under the stress. But the barrier held. Blue fire rippled across its surface like a living ocean, absorbing and redirecting the energy harmlessly into the void. The Union admiral watched from his flagship in disbelief. "They shouldn't have this kind of power," he hissed. His second officer whispered nervously, "Sir, the humans were supposed to be primitive." "Then explain that," the admiral growled, pointing at the shield glowing brighter than a sun on the Solace Bridge. Jace turned to his officers. "They've made their choice," he said quietly. "Now we make ours." He raised his hand. "Deploy the fleet." Outside, the void came alive. Terran warships emerged from hyperspace all around the sanctuary, engines roaring, hulls gleaming with white light, dozens of ships forming a perfect defensive wall, their weapons still cold but ready. Each bore the same message engraved along their sides. For those without a home. The Union fleet halted, their sensors overwhelmed by the sudden power surge. Jace's voice echoed across every open frequency. "To the Galactic Union fleet," he said, "you have entered Terran space and attacked unarmed refugees. This is your only warning. Withdraw or we will defend our home." For a long moment, the galaxy held its breath. And then, as the Union ships began to move again, humanity prepared to show the stars what compassion looked like when cornered. The galaxy had called them monsters once. Now, it would remember them as guardians. The void between the stars glowed with the tension of an unspoken war. The Terran fleet held position around the sanctuary ring, their ships aligned in perfect formation like silent sentinels guarding a sacred promise. Each hull shimmered with faint blue light, and every crew waited with quiet readiness. On the bridge of the TSS Solace, Commander Jace stood at the center, his eyes fixed on the red cluster of enemy Psi. Gnolls closing in. No one spoke. No one moved. Yet the air felt charged, alive with purpose. The Galactic Union fleet advanced slowly, their flagship, Eternal Judgment, leading the assault. Admiral Kor's voice echoed through the comms once more, thick with arrogance. "You stand alone, Commander," he said. "One small planet cannot defy the will of the galaxy." Jace's reply came calm, deliberate. "Funny thing about will," he said. "It's not measured by size." He looked to his communications officer. "Transmit this to all ships." Every Terran vessel received the same message. A simple phrase burned into their display. "Hold the line, no one crosses." Across the sanctuary, civilians and refugees watched the sky, the shimmering shield reflecting their fear and hope. Elra stood by the observation deck with her people, her eyes on the distant flashes of light. "The humans are outnumbered," whispered Lear. "They can't win this." Aelra shook her head slowly. "They're not fighting to win," she said softly. "They're fighting to keep their promise." The air around them vibrated as the fleet adjusted positions, every move smooth, every signal silent. It was not chaos. It was discipline born from centuries of survival. "Enemy within firing range," Rhea announced on the bridge. Jace gave a small nod. "Activate the defense net." With a low hum, the void around the Terran fleet lit up as energy nodes pulsed along invisible lines connecting ship to ship. A vast network of power linked them, creating an invisible wall of light and gravity. The first volley from the Union struck the barrier. The impact flared in brilliant white, shaking space itself. For a moment, the shield rippled, then steadied, glowing brighter. The energy didn't break it. It fed it. Gasps echoed across the Terran bridge, and even the Union admirals stared in shock. What is this?" one whispered. Jace smiled faintly. "That's what happens when you underestimate humans." On the outer flank, the TSS Valiant turned to face 3 enemy cruisers head-on. Its captain, an old war veteran, raised his hand and gave the order, "Fire!" Twin lances of plasma energy erupted from the ship's cannons, cutting through the void like lightning. The first Union cruiser exploded instantly, a burst of molten metal scattering across space. The other 2 veered aside, shields failing under the unexpected power. The human fleet didn't advance, didn't chase, they simply held, each ship covering the next, their formation as solid as a wall of iron and light. The Union returned fire with everything they had. Dozens of beams and missiles filled the dark, each one meeting the glowing barrier. The Terran ships shook but did not yield. Their shield absorbed every blast, redirecting the energy outward into vast arcs that danced across the stars. Inside the sanctuary, the children pressed their faces to the glass, watching the lights like a storm made of courage. To them, humanity looked like gods holding back the night. Admiral Kor slammed his fist against his console. "This is impossible," he snarled. "They're just one species." His second officer whispered, "Then perhaps one species is all it takes." Kor ignored him and barked new orders. "Deploy ion disruptors. Target their command ship." Massive projectiles launched from the Union flagship, each one pulsing with anti-energy designed to collapse shields. The Terran fleet held firm, but when the disruptors struck, the outer shield flickered dangerously. Sparks burst from consoles aboard the Solace, and alarms filled the bridge. "Shields at 60%, shouted Rhea. Jace clenched his jaw. "Reroute power from secondary systems. Divert all non-essential output into the defense grid." The lights dimmed across the ship, energy redirected into the barrier. The engines roared, the ship vibrated, but the shield flared back to full strength. The humans refused to fall. Then came Jace's command, quiet but final. "Activate the Vanguard pulse." Every Terran ship responded in perfect unison, energy building in their cores. The network of light between them began to glow hotter, brighter, until space itself shimmered. And then, it released. A massive wave of blue-white energy swept through the battlefield. It didn't destroy. It disabled. Union ships reeled as their systems crashed, their weapons going dark, their engines stalling. They were blind, powerless, drifting in the silent dark. The Terran fleet stood untouched, glowing like a constellation reborn. On the sanctuary below, Aelra and her people fell silent, watching the storm of light fade. They didn't kill them, Lear whispered in disbelief. They just stopped them. Aelra's voice trembled. That's what makes them different. Power used with mercy. In the command center of the Solace, Jace looked at the fading readings of the disabled fleet. He didn't smile, he didn't cheer. He simply said, "Hold position, no pursuit. We came here to protect, not to conquer." Those words carried across every channel, and for the first time in generations, the galaxy witnessed strength without cruelty. The humans had drawn their line in the stars, and no one, not even the mighty Galactic Union, dared to cross it again. The stars burned bright with the echoes of the clash, but silence followed. Deep and heavy, across the sanctuary ring, the glow of the defensive barrier faded to a soft pulse, still alive but dimming. Inside the command deck of the TSS Solace, Commander Jace stood unmoving, eyes fixed on the drifting remains of the Union fleet. Sensors reported that dozens of their ships were disabled, their weapons offline, their crews frightened but alive. It should have been over, yet everyone on the bridge felt the same unease. Something was wrong. "Commander," Lieutenant Rhea said, her voice tight. "Detecting new energy spikes behind the enemy line." Jace turned sharply, the main display blooming with red signatures. A second wave, larger than the first, emerging from hyperspace like a tide of blood and metal. At its center floated a black-hulled dreadnought twice the size of the Solace. It bore the mark of the Eternal Judgment, Admiral Kor's personal flagship rebuilt for vengeance. The First Fleet had been a warning. This one came to crush. Across the sanctuary, alarms rang again, lights flashing red through the habitat domes. Aelra looked up at the trembling ceiling as tremors shook the corridors. Her people gathered in panic, but she lifted her hands and spoke calmly. "Listen to me. Stay together. The humans will protect us. They always do." Her voice steadied them, yet inside her heart raced. She knew the enemy now wanted more than to reclaim prisoners. They wanted to make a lesson out of mercy itself. In orbit, the Second Union fleet spread wide, their weapons glowing like 1,000 suns. They opened fire without warning, streams of plasma and antimatter cutting across the void. The Terran shield flared once more, absorbing wave after wave, but this time the blows were relentless. "Shields at 40%, Rhea shouted, sparks raining from her console. The hull groaned, decks rattled, lights flickered. Jace gripped the command rail, his voice steady. "Maintain position, no retreat. If the line fell, the sanctuary would die. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, only the stand." "Commander," the tactical officer called. "Enemy dreadnought charging a superbeam." On the display, energy gathered at its core, swirling like a miniature star. Jace's eyes narrowed. "Target that cannon. All batteries fire on my mark." The Solace and its sister ships turned, weapons pivoting toward the looming monster. 3, 2, 1, Jace said softly. "Fire." Hundreds of Terran plasma bolts streaked across the darkness, tearing through escorts and shields. The dreadnought's glow faltered, but the beam still fired. A spear of crimson light slashed across space, striking the Terran line. The shockwave hurled ships aside like leaves in a storm. The barrier shattered for the first time, blue shards of energy scattering into the void. Inside the sanctuary, the lights went dark. Gravity flickered. Aelra clutched a support beam as the ground shook beneath her, children screaming around her. Lear grabbed a communicator, shouting over static, "Commander Jace, the shield is down. Do you copy?" The reply came faint, distorted, but clear. "Hold your people. We're not done yet." On the Solace bridge, flames licked the panels, smoke rising through the air. Half the systems were gone, but Jace still stood, his uniform scorched, his expression unbroken. Rhea coughed, wiping blood from her cheek. "Commander, we can't take another hit." He nodded once, calm and final. "Then we won't wait for it." He turned to the comm officer. "Patch me through to all Terran ships." The channel opened, and his voice carried across the entire fleet, steady and low. "This is Jace," he said. "Earth did not build you to conquer. Earth built you to protect. Those below us are the innocent, the exiled, the forgotten, and if we must fall, we fall keeping that promise. Engage full offensive. Show them what humanity means." The Terran fleet answered as one, engines igniting like dawn. They surged forward, a wall of white-hot fire cutting through the dark, every gun, every missile, every pulse beam unleashed at once. The void became a storm of light, Union ships exploding in sequence like dying stars. The Eternal Judgment tried to retreat, its shields buckling under the onslaught. Jace gave the final order. "Bring the Solace forward." The massive Terran flagship charged, colliding into the dreadnought's side, tearing through armor plating. Both ships burned together, locked in a deadly embrace. Inside the shattered corridor of the Union flagship, Admiral Kor staggered toward the command pit, smoke filling the air. Through the cracked viewport, he saw the Terran emblem glowing on the Solace's hull. A voice echoed through the comm. Jace's voice, quiet and cold. "You called us outcasts, Admiral," he said. "But we remember what exile taught us. Strength means nothing without mercy." Then a blinding light engulfed both ships, a shock wave rippling through the stars. When the brightness faded, the dreadnought was gone. The Terran fleet floated amid the debris, scarred but alive. The shield around the sanctuary flickered once, then reignited, stronger than before. Refugees wept as the lights returned. Elra fell to her knees, whispering, "They did it. They saved us again." Above, the human ships formed back into formation, their engines burning steady blue. Commander Jace's voice returned over every channel, tired but calm. "The line holds," he said. "Earth stands." The galaxy would speak of that day for centuries, the day when humanity fought not for glory, but for a home that wasn't even theirs. They bled so others could live, and in doing so, reminded the stars why humans were both feared and loved, because when they chose to protect, nothing could make them yield. The battle was over, yet the stars still shimmered with the glow of what had been. Wreckage drifted slowly through the quiet dark, pieces of ships that once carried arrogance and fear, now only silent reminders of a lesson learned. The sanctuary ring turned gently above Earth, its lights bright once more, a living halo of steel and mercy circling the blue planet below. Inside, humans and refugees worked side by side, repairing damage, tending the wounded, and honoring those who had fallen. Commander Jace sat in the med bay of the TSS Solace, his arm bandaged, his face pale but calm. Outside his window, the dawn light of Earth rose like fire through clouds of silver. Lieutenant Rhea entered quietly, holding a datapad, her voice soft. "The Refuge. The count is stable. No critical losses," she said. "The shield generators are fully restored." Jace nodded slowly, his gaze still distant. "And the Union fleet?" he asked. Rhea smiled faintly. "Gone, Commander. What's left of them retreated beyond Terran space." He let out a long breath, the kind that holds both relief and sorrow. "They'll remember this," he said. "Maybe not the battle, but what it cost us to win." Meanwhile, in the sanctuary's great dome, Aelra and her people stood before the monument of joined hands, the same one she had seen when she first arrived. Now, new words were being carved beneath the old ones, written in the language of the Varine. It read, "They sheltered the forsaken and became the light of all worlds." Her daughter stood beside her, eyes wide with awe. "Is it true, Mother?" she asked softly. "Will we live here now?" Aelra smiled, touching her child's face gently. "Not just live, little one. We will belong." The following days became a blur of rebuilding and renewal. Terran engineers worked tirelessly, patching hulls, restoring the habitats, and planting new gardens within the sanctuary's green domes. The air smelled of fresh soil and metal warmed by sunlight. Every corridor echoed with footsteps from every species, speaking different tongues but sharing the same laughter. No walls, no borders, only life continuing together. A broadcast went out from Earth, not a threat, not a declaration of war, but a message of peace. Jace's voice carried across the network, calm and resolute. To all who can hear, he said, Earth stands open to those who seek refuge. We will not turn away the lost, and we will not bow to fear. Strength without compassion is emptiness, and mercy without courage is silence. So we will live by both. Across the stars, countless hidden worlds listened, some in shame, some in hope. Even in the far councils of the Galactic Union, leaders watched in uneasy silence. They had once called Earth a Deathworld, but now they whispered a new name. The Heart World, back on the Solace. The Kree, you gathered at the observation deck. Through the massive glass wall, they watched as the sanctuary ring glowed brighter, reflecting the light of the rising sun. Rhea leaned beside Jace, her voice quiet. Do you think they'll ever come again? He shook his head slowly. Maybe, but next time they'll think twice. Then, after a pause, he added, and if they do, we'll still be here. Because this is what it means to be human. We fall, we rise, and we protect what matters. Down in the gardens, Aelra planted the first seed from her destroyed homeworld into Terran soil. It was a small silver-leafed plant that once grew beside her people's rivers, long vanished under Union fire. She knelt and pressed her hands into the earth, whispering a promise. This time, no one will burn our roots again. Human children gathered to watch, one handing her a small jug of water. She smiled and poured it gently, the soil glistening beneath the artificial sunlight. In that moment, her exile truly ended. Weeks later, a ceremony was held in the central plaza of the sanctuary. Refugees from dozens of worlds stood side by side with humans, banners of peace waving softly in the artificial breeze. Commander Jace stepped forward, still limping slightly, his uniform marked by battle but worn with pride. He looked out at the vast crowd and said, Once the galaxy cast out anyone who was different, anyone who dared to show kindness. But together we have proved that unity is stronger than fear. The stars may divide us by distance, but compassion will always bring us back together. As his words ended, the crowd erupted in applause, their voices echoing through the metal halls and out into the void beyond. Later that night, Aelra stood again at the viewport of her new home, watching the stars drift slowly across the endless black. She thought of all they had lost, and all they had found. The galaxy had cast them out, called them traitors, but in their exile they had found the one world willing to forgive. She placed a hand against the glass, feeling the faint vibration of the station's pulse beneath her palm, and she whispered softly, Once they called humans destroyers. Now I call them protectors. Now I call them family. Far below, Earth turned peacefully in the light of its sun, blue and eternal. Around it, the sanctuary shone like a second dawn, carrying millions of souls who had nowhere else to go. And somewhere deep within the solace, a message was engraved into its memory core, to be sent across the stars for all time. It read, Here, the cast-out found a home, and humanity found its heart.